Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday, where we tackle college football and NFL action, explore the biggest stories, and crown the most entertaining league of the week.
Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday with Dover and Barban. Let's talk football.
Yes, let's talk. It's finally here. And I guess we're going to start with college, so we're going to jump right in here. And the FSU Georgia Tech game, and what a game that was. So
now,
do you want me to get started, or do you want to get started?
Last podcast, we warned about overreaction, from the first week. So go ahead and overreact, John.
Okay. Well, all right. So that's a good way to get it going. Well, I have that. This is my first overreaction, and I have that. I'm thinking that's got to be in the top 10 games of the year, no matter what happens for the rest of the year. I can't I can't see. Now, this is biased. Maybe I'm just in withdrawal, and watching NFL preseason is just horrifically bad. And finally seeing a competitive game that went down to the last play, with the field goal to win the game with time expiring on the clock. Even game the whole way through, back and forth. Like, I can't see how you can get a better game, but maybe I just haven't seen a good game, in whatever, 6-7 months. Hey, so I'll take anything, but I don't think so. I think that really was a good game. And I think by the end of the year, it might still be in people's best game of the year list.
Listen, you're not wrong, right? Like, that was a field goal as time expired to win the game. So you're right. It was a good game. It was evenly played. There was some swings and momentum, but it wasn't perfectly executed all quarters. But you're absolutely right. It was a good game. It's a combination of all that. I think it's the first regular season back. It had a ranked team, and the field goal to win it at the end. It was a great game. So you're not wrong.
Yep. All right. So. Do you want to get going, or do you want me to follow along with some of my points here?
No, hit me with your next point.
All right. So one of my first notes I have here is 10.5, 10.5 point spread. What can you do? It's just hard to predict the first games of the season. You never really know what you're going to get. And maybe throughout the season, you learn more about both teams. But it's just so hard. I mean, a bunch of players went to the NFL on FSU. I guess they assumed DJU was going to step in and somehow be better than Jordan Travis. Because from what I gather and what it looked like, he's just what he's always been. That was about a normal game from him without a backbreaking interception.
Yeah, they commented that, I think, during the game where the DJU has played in over 40 games now. So he's a pretty known commodity. So and that's what he is. He's more of a game manager. He's got all the tools, but there's no really game breaking, that is the most anomalous quarterback first game that I've seen in a while. I don't know if you remember that. His very first one with Clemson, I think it was against Notre Dame, and he threw for 350 yards. And it was like, oh, this is going to be the next Lawrence, this is it, because he was a 5-star QB and it's going to be fantastic. And then ever since then, it feels like he's been serviceable. And so, and that's what they're getting now. I haven't seen something like that disparity often. So he is what he is and people thought that they were going to lean on to in the run game more and lean on that offensive line, but they couldn't do it because the offensive line was allowing pressure from Georgia Tech's, their defensive line, and that was supposed to be the strength of the team, and it didn't look like that. And so when it doesn't look like that, then they lean more on DJU, and he's not ready to burden the load. So it was that was the big shocker for me. Is really the offensive line for FSU and the defensive line weren't dominant, and they thought they were going to be going in. And this Georgia Tech defensive line is not going to be the best one they see this season. So that would have me concerned. So
I had a thought. These are a couple of things I wanted to say earlier, but I was saving it for the pod. If we didn't know and didn't have expectations of either team, so let's say those two teams took the field with blank uniforms. Like, I know this is an impossible thought experiment, but without all the expectations of Florida State going into this game and whatever we assumed Georgia Tech would be, Would you not just say those were evenly matched teams?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, even clearly seeing the color of the jerseys, I felt they were evenly matched teams.
Okay, right. But I mean the 10.5 spread after you watch the game, there's no talent. There was no visible or obvious difference in talent. It seems as though Georgia Tech out hustled them, even though the score was very, very close. It seems like Georgia Tech was the more active team, just causing more havoc in the backfield. Seems like they got more. They managed to tackle the FSU running backs and receivers on first hit, where it seems like Georgia Tech seemed to get another couple yards after first hit every time. I don't know. It just looked like that was the more active team, the team that more wanted to be there, maybe.
Those are like. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That those 2 points was that FSU's roster is supposed to be better, like the overall talent, and it did not look like it on the field. And it looked like Georgia Tech was more into the game than FSU. It felt like there was a bit of a hangover still from being snubbed from the playoffs, and Georgia Tech was absolutely faster to the ball than FSU was. And it felt more, that intensity was more of what I expected from FSU in the bowl game when a bunch of people opted out and they were really no interested in being there, considering they didn't make the playoffs. But it seems like it was that they still haven't gotten rid of that, and they didn't come out firing against Georgia Tech. So I think both those points are excellent.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have no idea what to expect out of either of these teams for the rest of the year, but one of the major overreactions that I think is already happening is the speculation is FSU already knocked themselves out of the playoffs, because given the rest of their schedule, they've got some tough games coming up. And I'm sure people were banking on them having one loss somewhere, but not this team, not this game.
No,
so
exactly.
Somewhere. So, and we don't know. We've never seen. This is the first time for the 12-team playoff. We don't know how the committee's really going to choose some of these other teams that are going to likely have 2 losses. I just cannot see them running the table from here on out, unless this is their worst performance, and they do. But I can see how people think, oh, now they got to be perfect for the rest of the season to make the playoffs. That seems reasonable, given this was not the loss they thought they would be taking if they took one this season.
Right. Well, and listen, we talked about it last time, where you don't want to overreact, to the first week. I'm overreacting. I feel like they're going to be in big trouble for, because of everything you said about the talent disparity and the intensity. Like neither of those are good signs. But if you're an FSU fan, I think back to the season where Ohio State lost, I think it was the Virginia Tech at the beginning of the season, and then ran the table after that. And that's why they say it's a long season. It's, they can still right the ship, and the talent is supposed to be there, so that if you're Florida State, that's what you're banking on. But it's an uphill climb now, and you won't feel better until it's like 6-1 or 7-1 or something, which is 6 or 7 games away from now, right? And not
the big test is when they hit. So what I have my notes here. The big teams still to go are Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Florida at the end of the year. So I think maybe Clemson's the first in that grouping. So that's going to be what I would imagine is the Florida State fan base is looking at that game as the true barometer. If they're going to count this as an anomaly and they make it to the Clemson game without losing again, that to me, I think that's how they're going to view it. Is that's the test right there? Are we legit or not? And that Clemson game, I think's
and you're right.
For whatever Clemson's, for better, for however good they are this year, that's still going to be a tough game, right? So I think that's the barometer, the first barometer after this.
Yeah, you're right. It's the next game is against Boston College, Memphis, Cal, because that's a classic ACC matchup, and then at SMU, and then they host Clemson on October 5th. So you're right. That'll be, there. If you're the FSU fan, you're hoping that you're 4-1. At that point, going into hosting Clemson. So, and it's real, and it's this year feels it's really important that game's at Doak Campbell instead of at Clemson, because that would make a big difference. But
all right, so what do you have? I have a few
that's
more
it
notes
for me
here.
For that game.
Okay,
no.
So I have a note here. What fan bases is this game going to affect or change the mood of? Now, I think it changes the mood of every fan base on the FSU schedule for sure, but set that aside for a minute. So include everyone on the schedule. But a much bigger deal, I think, to certain teams, and that would be Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame, and UF, because all four of those teams probably just looked at that game, and I'm sure they had the UF game scheduled or circled on the schedule, and now I'm guessing those fan bases are looking at that game and thinking, oh, I think we might have a much better chance at that game than they previously thought, or that game's not going to be as difficult as we thought, or just I bet you the mood just lightened. I know as a Gator fan, I already think, oh, we might have a shot at beating them. Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking, man, I don't know by the end of the season if they can have anything left after what the Gators are going to go through. I'm just assuming they just get beat up in that game. Now I don't think so. Again, now that's an overreaction, but I'm sure every fan base in Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame are thinking the same way. Like that might not be as tough of a game as we thought it would be.
Yeah, no, you started it by asking, which fan base would be affected the most. And I think Georgia Tech fan base was affected a lot by this game. I think I don't know what their expectations were going into the season. It wasn't super high. I know that. And now when you look at their schedule, they've got Georgia State, Syracuse, VMI. So there's a good chance they're going to be 4-0 going into a Louisville game. And that, and then that's a great position to be in. So I think that they're, going to be ecstatic to potentially start the season 4-0. So especially with a win already with a ranked team.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't mean to not give the Georgia Tech fan base love. Of course, they're the number one fan base that game affected and put a much more positive mood on the season, probably.
I mean, FSU's fan base would have been pretty jacked for this season to start, especially how, they were a really good team last year. So that'd be pretty devastating. But I mean, I think that's the benefit when you're an average fan for a team that doesn't always have super high expectations, like in Georgia Tech would be that, then the wins feel even sweeter, And so that's one of our friends works at Utah State, and there's no expectations for that team a lot. And so when they have a big game, it feels amazing. So that's so good on them. I'm super excited for how awesome it would have been to be a Georgia Tech fan, made the trip all the way out there to Ireland and then be able to celebrate a win that you couldn't have been sure that was coming. So that would have been, they would have loved that.
Big gamble. Okay. And so, and then I have one other fan base that game probably gives them a little caution now, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs fans.
Oh.
So looking at you, Santiago. So a friend of ours who's actually in the band at Georgia, I chatted with him a little bit, and he told me before the game, he's like, I think Georgia Tech's going to give them all they can handle, and you were right. And I'm sure the Georgia fans are thinking, and they Georgia Tech gave Georgia everything they could handle last year. And it looks like this GT team is even better than last year's. So I'm sure the Georgia fan base is thinking, oh, geez, now that's going to be a hassle at the end of the season. Again, maybe they're even better this time. So that's another fan base I was thinking that game affects the Bulldog fan base. Just thinking, okay, this season's going to be tough. I mean, it's already going to be a tougher schedule with the way the SEC is changed. And obviously Georgia's the big brother in that rivalry series, but I think it's going to be a tougher game than they all wished it would be, or were hoping it would be, based on this result.
No, that's a good point. I think that the last three games of Georgia Tech's season is against Miami and NC State and then Georgia. And so for sure before this weekend, Miami and NC State were probably looking at those games as, no problem. But they wouldn't be looking at that either, and Georgia will be included in that. It'd be super tough for Georgia. That's a non-conference game for them too, and but that's it would have got their attention, and that's one of those the advantages of having this season starting with this a big game at a neutral site, the week 0 where everyone was watching like us because there was nothing else on. That was the only game at noon, so it was got all the attention. So there. Multiple fan bases were paying attention to that.
Yep. All right. So do you have anything else for college, or are you good for college?
Yeah, no, I had a comment just on the SMU Nevada game. That was, to me, it didn't get as much attention because of, neither team was ranked going into it, but that's another one. SMU's making the change to the ACC this year. So there's some ACC teams that have been looking at them and, thinking about what they would be like. And they struggled against Nevada, which is considered to be not a very strong team this year. So that's not a great opening for them either. I think some talking about how fan bases would feel about it. There's a lot of ACC fan bases that are, less worried about SMU now coming up on the schedule. You don't want to overreact, as we said, for the one game, but similar points. They were supposed to have a much stronger roster than Nevada, and they easily could have lost that game. Like there was a punt and a safety and a turnover late, and Nevada easily could have won that, which would have really put a hamper on their schedule. They escaped with a win, but no one. It'd be hard. A win's a win, but there's no way they feel that good about it. And so for both teams, again, going forward, Nevada was zero expectations, and they weren't terrible. So that's a good thing. No. So that's
they were scrappy, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I liked watching. I enjoyed watching the highlights of that game more than I thought I would. So
yeah. Again, I don't know if that's a side effect for me of just nothing else to watch. And
NFL on a regular week, I don't know if I would have got eyes on it, but opening week, sure did.
All right. So is there anything, do you want to just comment on games you're looking forward to in college before we move on to the NFL?
Yeah, well, this is a great week. We've got a Colorado and North Carolina, Minnesota playing on Thursday. We've got Oklahoma, another ranked team with big expectations, going on Friday. And then my Saturday is full with Clemson and Georgia, the UF Miami, and then Notre Dame at Texas A&M. So it's going to be a great week. We've overreacted to 4 teams already from week 0, and there's going to be a lot of overreaction in week 1. A lot of fodder for discussion after that. And then it's just so happy it's here because we're football fans. We enjoy football on Saturday and Sunday, and this Saturday is going to be a good one.
And Sunday, I think we've got LSU USC on Sunday.
You're right.
I think, and then interestingly, Florida State by itself, with all eyes on them again on Monday.
Yep.
Right? We got Boston. Again, I think it's Boston College. So it's not like they're going to be hidden in the mess of games to watch. Everyone who's like us, who wants to watch, is going to be watching them again and seeing are they going to bounce back from that or not.
Yep. No, exactly. And it's
it's going to be a huge week.
Yep.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad for these opening weekends like this. Well, I guess week 0 was opening, but for all of these really good games, like right out of the gates.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And really this is setting up for the whole season, right? There's like Florida and Texas and Bam and Michigan and Oregon and all the crossover, like because all the combination of all the conferences and stuff now, there's going to be really, it feels like there's more good games on the schedule than there ever has been. So hopefully it's the sign of things to come.
Yeah, I would always scan the schedule and try to find the best weekends. And it was really hard to find.
Yes.
Previously, it was hard to find 6, 7 good games, at least what I would consider bangers that you have to find a way to get eyes on. And now every single week, right out of the gates, all through the season's got like many, many games, like a half a dozen or more games that you don't need to be a fan of either team to appreciate that's going to be an awesome game. So
do you think that game at Florida State is on Monday? Boston College goes to Florida State, and if Boston College goes up 7-0, 10-0, do you expect the crowd to boo at any point?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. That fan base has got to be so mixed emotions right now. Forgetting the snub, so they got the snub. Travis goes down. Their team no shows in the bowl game. Then this happens. They must be on a bit of an emotional, I don't know if I want to say down, whatever it is. They're going to frustration. Let's say they must be frustrated. If any FSU fans are watching, let us know in the comments. Like, how frustrated does it feel right now to go from the snub to the bowl game performance, and then starting the season with much higher expectations and hopes, and then this happens. So I don't know if that. Maybe. I just don't know if they want to attack their own team like that.
Yeah. Florida State's favored by 15.5. And if they go down 7-0 or 10-0 or something, man, it'd be hard for the players not to get tight or starting, getting at least a level of urgency.
Is this a Norvell
That'd be
thing?
tough.
Like, just they're not prepared? Like, do we even have a guess at how?
Oh, that's
or just
a hot
GT's
take
just
right
that
there.
good?
No, let's clip that, Barbin. There was it's Norvell.
Why don't we
it's,
just
not that
just
good.
an even?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. It's if I was a smarter person, I'd be coaching a team myself. I don't know. It's hard to say what. It must be a combination of things. I think they've lost some people in the roster. I think playing that hard and going 13-0 and not making the playoffs, like let alone getting beaten early on in the playoffs, would be really hard. No one was into the bowl game for sure, and I just don't think you can flip the switch like that. I don't think you can flip the switch to hungry and competitive, and it's really hard. So I think it's a combination of stuff where they came out a little flat. But we'll see. This is where Norvell was going to make the paycheck this week. If he can, if they come out hair on fire Monday, then he's done an amazing job, because they haven't looked like that for now. What's 2 games straight?
So I guess my last thought, I just had it right now. Maybe FSU's overall talent last year maybe wasn't that good, but Travis was. And that's the difference. They don't have a QB that can bail them out of situations.
Yeah,
I've heard one person with that take, so maybe that's it.
Yeah, there's something about having a supremely talented QB that really hides a lot of flaws on a team. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's good for the college portion. So let's move on to the NFL.
All right. So what's your first thought for absolutely nothing scheduled this weekend?
My first thought is, thank God the NFL preseason is over. Yeah. It's just so painful to watch. I know we've already talked about that. And again, they're in the NFL uniforms. They're on NFL fields, but it ain't NFL football. I don't really know what else to say about it.
You take the no schedule over watching any more preseason games.
I mean, I'm just a sucker. I'm just so football deprived. I turn it on, and within 5 minutes, I'm just looking for something else to do. It's just there's nothing. I mean, so I do have notes. Obviously, there's not much to react to here because the season hasn't started. So my first thing, and obviously from our thumbnail, is Trey Lance throwing 5 interceptions and then 2 fumbles, and how awful that was. And he's never going to get better. He is likely maybe the worst pick ever. Okay, so it's close. Jamarcus Russell's probably worse. Akili Smith, there's some really, really bad ones. But the fact that they traded up for this guy and gave away picks, and this is the result. I mean, they got so lucky that Purdy turned out. Otherwise, that franchise would be a mess right now, and it'd be because of this. And we'd be talking about maybe the worst trade and move up in the draft ever for a player.
Man,
this could actually be it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd never thought about what would San Francisco look right now without Purdy, because that was the last pick. Like they could easily not have had him. Like every team had multiple chances to get him, and so to have that much talent on the team and the QB that was that's not able to take advantage of it would that'd be so different right now, considering how dominant they feel and how high their ceiling is, right? It really shows you how important the QB position was. Not that everyone doesn't know that, but I mean that's a really good point, because Lance wasn't the answer, and so they're so fortunate that they got him, because that Purdy really makes the difference. So, and
since Purdy's so cheap, that makes up for the money they wasted on this guy. So anyways, and so I have a follow-up note to that. And it just says, it shows how much NFL GMs are really gambling every time they make a top draft pick. They just really don't know what's going to happen. There's been some can't miss guys, or what seemed to be can't miss guys that completely missed. There's others where I think some GMs are just a little too optimistic. Like, I never bought into the Jamarcus Russell thing at all. Like, he was talented and all, but I thought, man, really? Okay, sure, give it a try. And then there's others like maybe Andrew Luck and Trevor Lawrence, where you're going to get if not a regular starter, something more than a regular starter. So, but again, there's enough top draft picks that just don't work out. And then if you work backwards from the guys who have all the Super Bowls, like Brady, Mahomes. These guys, none of these were number one picks. They were all picked somewhere other than number one. So that leads me into my thoughts on all of the guys that got drafted this year, because there's a lot of hype around all of them. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, McCarthy until he got hurt, Drake May, like all of these guys, Bo Nix now too. And it's what's it going to look like with all of these guys? Are any of these guys going to turn into Trey Lance? Which one? And is there a Brock Purdy in this draft class we aren't even anticipating yet?
Yeah. So what I hear you saying too, from that first part of the Lance, it's especially for the fan base, they'd be super disappointed when a pick doesn't work out, right? When they move up, when they allocate that many resources and it just doesn't work out. And really you get to this point where there's so many interceptions and like it's really apparent that this isn't going to be an answer going forward. And it's just really disappointing because you took a shot on someone that you thought you looked at all the information possibly available to you, and thought that this was a good move, and you could be wrong still, which is super frustrating, especially as a fan, because you just, you want a good team and you want the best person available. So, and if you're right, it's clearly, it's not a straightforward answer on picking the best person, because if there's people make mistakes all the time, and it's, you think that there's someone's going to work out and they don't. If there was ever a way of predicting it, then it wouldn't look like this, right? So, and it's really hard to predict it because there's so many variables involved. But yeah, it's disappointing. Like I don't want anyone to fail. Like I'd love for Trey Lance to be awesome. So it's really just too bad when they don't work out. So
yeah, and some franchises somehow seem like they keep missing for decades and decades. Like Miami has missed since Dan Marino. Gone through 20 quarterbacks, and no one believed really in any of them. Tua is literally the first one since Marino where they're kind of excited about him being a franchise guy. I don't believe he'll ever get there, especially with Mahomes and Josh Allen, Lamar, like all the people, and now CJ Stroud. It might just be bad timing, but Tua, I think, is limited. And I think he's going to be the AFC's version of Prescott. Gets you to the playoffs all the time. Kind of fun to watch. Kind of puts up a lot of numbers, and in the playoffs, it just can't level up in the play. At least that's what he looks like so far, and he's proved it a few times already. Obviously, they can improve, but it doesn't seem like in the NFL there's that long tail gradual improvement into a superstar. It seems like it hits fast. Like Joe Burrow, straight to the Super Bowl within 2 years. Patrick Mahomes, a few years, right in the Super Bowl, winning Super Bowls right away. Lamar Jackson, a couple years MVP. Now, he still has to prove it. But I mean, just being utterly dominant, like Tua's never been that dominant. So a lot of the guys who they hit pretty quick. Like look at, I would take Stroud over Tua right now for sure.
That's an interesting point. I'll slightly push back on that, where there's a few examples in the NFL of really good QBs that have never won a Super Bowl, right? Like the Dan Marino, and like in Fouts, I think was one of them too. Like they had excellent careers and were excellent QBs, but
Rivers.
never. And I think and it's really hard to. Rivers is up there, so it's really hard to win. It's really hard to get to that. That's what makes what Mahomes has done, so impressive, going back to back the last 2 years and looking for the three-peat this year. Like that doesn't happen that often, and it's because it's hard, right? So
yeah. Well, I didn't mean you have to win a Super Bowl. Like for instance, Marino never did, but he proved he could get there, and he got there right away. So he has that. He has that. But then not again talent.
For a while.
Could have been mismanagement of the. If it wasn't his talent, that's for sure. It was something about how that team is constructed, and maybe I know that I remember the criticism being they just relied on him too much and never built a proper balanced offense, which eventually in the playoffs will catch up with you. If you're just we have the best quarterback, he'll get us through. That gets you through the regular season, but it's not going to get you all the way to the Super Bowl, or at least
here's my
not
thoughts
consistently.
About what you were talking about with all the young QBs this year and seeing if they work out. Something that really surprised me in the preseason was how little Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, or not really Drake May, but like how little they played. Like they sat out the last game, or after the first series and stuff. And I know they don't want them to get hurt. Like I understand that, but they've never played in the NFL before, and so I'm really surprised at how limited they were, in considering how much they're I feel like experience they could get at this time.
Yeah, and I think that's just the economics of it all. When we talked earlier about this, and maybe they're just protecting them. I mean, if they know he's the starter, they know he's the starter, and obviously you want to speed him up to NFL speed reps and not have him.
Mhm.
My guess, I could be wrong, but my guess is preseason speed is still not regular season speed, because
So you
the starter.
you think maybe giving them that preseason experience might not actually translate to regular season because it's different enough in terms of the speed or what they would see.
No, I think it's useful because I'm assuming it must be faster than college,
Uh-huh.
but it's got to be an intermediate. It's somewhere
Yeah,
between
right. It's not
college
as
and
fast as the regular season.
right.
Therefore, if they played in the preseason, that wouldn't necessarily make them better. Wouldn't get them as prepared as you would think for as I would think for the regular season, because it's going to be still another level up in speed.
We'll put
for
it
the
put
regular
it this
season.
way: any of these guys, Caleb Williams doesn't know what it's like to have Myles Garrett coming off the corner. Like he just does. It's just no preseason games teaching him that. That's just that's going to be a new thing whenever they finally play that team, whether or not they're even scheduled this year. I don't know, but that's my, they don't know what it's like for Chris Jones coming.
World class edge rusher.
No idea what that kind of speed is, but not just the quarterback. Whoever's playing, if you've got a new D tackle, not D tackle, offensive tackle. What happens the game when he's up against, I don't know, Nick Bosa? Like what is that? That's a speed they're not ever get. Nothing in preseason is going to be the same as one of those type of guys. So it's just I guess you can learn from it. It is faster than college, but there's going to be another speed coming.
No, you're right.
Which I would think in the regular season.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That might be one of the reasons why they don't do that, because it wouldn't translate as well as you would think for the regular season, because it's different enough. No, that's a good point.
All right, you got one?
No, I think that it's this. I think having no game scheduled this week is better than what's happened in the past, where they have like no starter sees the field, or even most backups. Like it was really third string and practice squad stuff back in the day. So just having a week off, especially since they've gone to 17 games now, is a good idea. But it's still, as a fan, this was Labor Day weekend, and I was looking forward to an NFL game, and so to not have something until next Thursday was tough. So, but
that's okay. College is really filling in the gaps. Yeah,
exactly. That's
well. All right. Well, then I got a couple more things. Let's roll with some of these thoughts with me here. So I just have Ravens again. Speaking in terms of how the Ravens fans feel about this, seeing what I would consider a pretty sloppy game. I get it's preseason; these aren't your starters, but the 4 turnovers and just getting rolled right over by Green Bay. I thought this can't feel good to watch that. If that's what you're thinking, now go with me on this one. Are the fan base is thinking this is what our depth looks like? Like if this is our depth versus their depth, and we fumbling all over interception, like this is what we're capable of. That doesn't feel good, or at least I'm imagining that cannot feel good from a team that, I mean, looked like they were a Super Bowl bound team last year. I mean, it looked like it was their year. They lose a couple players this year, and I don't know I don't know if they might sense this. Maybe the more cynical ones might look at this thinking, and this is just a sign of that we've taken a step back. Like even we can't even get through a preseason game looking like we're a real contender. Again, I know that's not Lamar Jackson out there doing any of this, but you would expect a degree of execution even from whoever's on the field. Put it this way: the other team didn't do this. You're the one with all the turnovers, not the other team. So it doesn't look good, doesn't feel good when you see anybody in your uniform playing this badly. Right.
No, I agree. I think that it's surprising at this level because it's very hard to make an NFL team, right? There's less than 5% of the college players make an NFL team. That's 95% don't make an NFL team. It's really hard to make an NFL team. It's really hard to play at that league. And you would think that goes for the starters and the backups, because it's still that small percentage of people make it to that. And so it's surprising to see that lack of execution at that level, knowing how hard it is to be on that team, even as a backup. So that it can't feel good. I think that as a fan base, you started the question by saying, how's the fan base feel about it? I think they do all kinds of mental gymnastics in their head to be like, this isn't the team that's going to be starting week one. We don't need these guys. I think they think of it as many different ways as they can to make it not feel as hurtful as it would be to see your team and your jersey make those mistakes and look like they're that ill prepared for it. So I think I think that there's no way it feels good. I think they have to justify it any way they can.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, you're just, it's just not going to feel good going into the season.
Yeah. It's rare when they have those, when the starting left tackle is not playing because it's the preseason, and then they have the rookie come in and play really well. That really stands out more than the poor. Well, they focus on that more than the poor play. So hopefully that's what, there's some teams that could still hang their hat on that. But no, that one, the Ravens, there was that. I'm hoping that that's not an indication of what the team as a whole is going to look like week one.
Oh, I don't think it is at all. It was more of the thought of knowing your team should be right there at the end of the year and for challenging for the AFC. Is to just it'll kind of feel a little wrong that you can look that bad in the preseason, even if it's part of the just depth of your team that you're looking at. I don't know, maybe most of those guys aren't even going to make the squad. I don't know. It just, something doesn't feel right about a team that should be challenging for the AFC, putting up that bad of a performance, even in a preseason game. That something feels like disconnected to me about that. But any Ravens fans, let us know.
You're right.
And my last note here is some of the starting quarterbacks who did take a series or two just look really poised and like they're playing at a different speed than everyone else out there. I specifically have a note here about Trevor Lawrence. I just caught a bit of one of their games, and he just sort of just easily went down the field, dotting people all the way down. Just looked like he was going through exercises. And then I watch the Steelers, and Justin Fields and the Steelers still cannot complete a snap. As if I'm referring to it as complete a snap. Like that's a challenge for them. So I think Fields there's just nothing there. I think that's going to be a bit of a circus because I don't think Russell Wilson's all that good, but man, Fields, every time I look at him, and if we're going to consider that this is just the preseason, he doesn't look good. It's not like he's up against the best defenses out there. What I'm saying is when I see Lawrence take a few series, super poised. When any of the starters either in there for a little bit, they look like they're in maximum control. They're moving slow. Everyone else is frantic, and they just have it under control. And as a third-year starter, at least I guess he's a third-year starter. How is Fields Fields? How is he just scrambling around and just doesn't look like he looks like one of these guys fighting to make a roster.
Yes.
But he's been in the league and has many, many starts at full NFL speed. And now maybe it's the center's terrible, but God, maybe that's just a statement on what that team's offensive line's going to look like. I don't know. Just every time I noticed the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason highlights, it was something sloppy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think that Trevor Lawrence, that is the outstanding. It doesn't matter what position it is, but it's really noticeable at QB when you're really good. And in the preseason, they go 5 for 5 for 80 yards, and then they don't play again. And they play, like you said, it looks super easy. It's poised. They know where they're going to throw the ball, what seems like many seconds before it happens. And that's why they don't look rushed. There's not an ounce of urgency in their body, and they complete the play and make it look easy. Really make it look easy, and like they're playing at a much easier level than anyone else. And that's really striking. Like you said, I think that's an excellent example. Trevor Lawrence looked like under complete control, no urgency, lots of poise. Very easily decision making, in terms of what he's going to do for each play, and the contrast of that to Fields, who has some experience, who was an excellent QB in college. He was fantastic, but it doesn't always translate like that to the NFL. And despite his, Pittsburgh isn't supposed to be a terrible team. Like, I know they're in between QBs right now, but they shouldn't be terrible. Like, so it shouldn't be a really bad offensive line or offensive personnel around there. But man, are they making it look like that? Like when they can't complete, the center quarterback exchange, when he's running around, like it looks like he doesn't know where he wants to go with the ball. He's filled with urgency in the preseason, and it really stands out compared to Trevor Lawrence or Brock Purdy or, people that literally play one series. And it's the coach, it feels like when they look at them and they're like, oh yeah, we're good. Like, we don't need to play him anymore. He's got this. Versus these ones were like, okay, well, let's see what he does in the second preseason game, because he's not showing it yet. And that's a terrible sign. Like, there's no way you look like that in the preseason and then go into the regular season and knock it out. Like, I hope I'm wrong. I hope one of Russell Wilson or, they either one works out, but man, they look, you said it perfectly. They look so different. If you look at those a couple of series with Trevor Lawrence versus Fields, it's not the same.
No. And I'm with you. I do have this fascination, or this, I sense that I want all the young quarterbacks to work out. And I had this thought, in our lifetimes, we've just watched dynasty after dynasty, and not a lot of parity, as much as the NFL works to get to parity. A few quarterbacks in our lifetime have absorbed most of the Super Bowls. Either a spot in the Super Bowl, or just winning the Super Bowl. Well, Brady, and now it looks like Mahomes is going to do it. Manning won a couple, but the two Mannings, and then Denver were in the Super Bowl 4 or 5 times with John Elway, and then Joe Montana. And then Jim Kelly.
Steve
so
Young.
it was in our lifetime. You've got quarterbacks.
That's not many people. Like, you just covered several decades.
I was thinking about this the other day.
People.
But 35 years later, however long it's been that we've been watching football, there's not that many QBs who've been in the Super Bowl, because it's the same ones over and over and over again. And then I thought about, my God, in 40 or 50 years of watching football, do you only ever see a dozen guys? Maybe 15, 16. I mean, Brady was in 11? He occupied 11 of the Super Bowl spots. Manning occupied 5 or 6? Like, he was in it at least. He won 2. Was he in it 4 times, maybe something like that?
Not sure,
so,
but it definitely.
I mean, just that's 2 guys that took up 15 Super Bowls, like, the AFC side of it. And then between Aikman and Joe Montana, that's 6 or 7 taken up right there on the NFC side. It just occurred to me, not a lot of quarterbacks get to the Super Bowl. And to me, I think that's where my desire for new quarterbacks in the NFL excites me, because I want to see somebody else in there. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
And I fear that Mahomes is just going to be there every year from now. Like, he's going to be the new guy that's always there. And if Burrow can stay healthy, that might just be Brady and Manning all over again. Just the two of them just doing it the whole time.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. It says 2 things. First, don't tell anyone we've watched football for 35 years again. And 2, it's you're right about the influx of talent, right? As football fans, we seeing good players is what makes it exciting. And so, and the only way you get new players is when new young players come in and turn out really well, right? And football is better when there's multiple good teams that can challenge each other and multiple different teams can win, right? When you have a dynasty like the 49ers, like you said, or the Cowboys of that year, or with Tom Brady, is that they eliminate all the other teams, and you see the same thing over and over. And so that's that's what's exciting about the influx of talent, right? With the new ones coming in. If Drake May can hit it and be good, like, that would be exciting. If Jane Daniels is really good, Washington has really struggled for many years now. If they seem to have a good team, they just haven't been able to put it together with the QB. So if he's good for them, that's exciting. Like that Washington could upset some teams this year. And so it's that new I even like it with different positions. Like, I love it, when there's crazy good tight end comes in, and then people can't keep up with him in the secondary, and he's just running wild. Like that guy for Atlanta who came from Florida. He's Pitts. He's a matchup nightmare. So just seeing, or like in the guy for San Francisco too, the QB
Kittle,
or the tight end Kittle, like seeing them run amok, in the secondary, and those are the talent mismatches are great, and and that's what's good when the new influx of talent comes in, and there's new young players that are, they're like seeing good players, and that's where they come from. That's where it starts, right? So it's great.
So that gave me a thought that in the NFL, dynasties revolve around a player, and in college, a dynasty revolves around a program. So when Ohio State is on a roll, or Alabama's on its current roll, and Georgia starts its roll, it doesn't matter who's playing there. It's that program that's on the roll. Because the QBs come and go. The talent lasts. If you're good, you're only there for 3 years, then you're off to the NFL. So you can't have one guy in the national championship 11 years, the way Brady went to the Super Bowl. But the same team can repeatedly show up with different people. So that just occurred to me that it's a player-centric dynasty in the NFL, but it's a team-centric or a program-centric dynasty in college. But at least in college, you see different people flow through. So you see Justin Fields, then you see CJ Stroud. Like, you do see different people. Yes, same uniform, but you are seeing different people, in that position.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, I mean,
that I think is a big difference, because that was, and I was going to use Saban as an example, because they won a lot during his time and were in the game a lot, but those teams didn't feel the same. Like they went through a period of sort of game manager QBs, and with like really good run game and a defense that gave up nothing, to a more wide open passing game, like with Tua and Hurts and stuff, like, so the team feels different. They don't win it the exact same way every time. And so that's part, whereas like when New England won it every year, it felt like Brady was doing it, and mostly because the parts around him changed all the time. So having the Bama winning it in the different ways with the different personnel that they had, they were there all the time, and we still sort of wanted a different matchup than Bama Clemson there for a bit, but it's the team felt different, like they did it in a different way, and so that's why it was good. It was exciting for them.
Yeah. So I guess that transitioned us back to talking about both leagues, and I guess it's probably time to wrap this one up, right? And pretty obvious as a review. I mean, who won the week?
Yeah, so for me, it's going to be the college one this week. Mostly be from the something good to something unwatchable. So it wasn't even a competition, but I'm excited for the NFL to start. I'm glad I don't have to watch nothing games this weekend, and thank goodness there's enough college on that. As a football fan, I'm gonna be all right.
Agreed. Yeah, obviously college wins the week. The NFL preseason just can't compete with actual real in-season college games, and that game was a banger. So
the fact that Trey Lance had more like turnovers than like SMU and Nevada is like, it's shocking that that's what was happening. So
it's I know. Anyways, well, I think his story, there's not much left of his NFL story. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So for Jeff Dover, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Saturday versus Sunday podcast.